Welcome to Call Before Showing, a podcast where we help real estate pros navigate the emotional ups and downs of the real estate business
and hear the stories of real people who buckle in and ride the roller coaster with us.
Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Call Before Showing podcast. This is Alex Eldridge, and I'm here with Allison McPherson.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about something that Allison did last week. Why don't you tell us what you did last week?
I went to the Brian Buffini Success Tour in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions, and we should start with explaining what is the Buffini Success Tour for maybe some new agents that aren't familiar.
Okay, so Brian Buffini is a real estate guru, I guess I would call him. He teaches on working by referral, and he has a coaching program and a coaching company that help real estate agents build their business by referral. So the Success Tour is essentially a big seminar where a bunch of real estate agents and realtors get together and learn from Brian Buffini and his team. So he has a bunch of different people that are a part of his team that teach on different things. Like one person will talk about listings, one person will talk about kind of the personal side of things like scheduling and how to run your schedule. Some people are just primarily there for inspiration. They always have one speaker that is outside of the Buffini company, but is an expert in whatever they do.
Like they're a motivational speaker, or they're...
Right. So like a motivational speaker or an author who has written about leadership, or like Mel Robbins was one that she came last year to the Richmond Success Tour, and she's really big on taking action. A lot of times they're kind of the more like inspirational people or whatever. But this year at Richmond, it was a productivity expert. So he talked about ways that you can like clear your mind better so that you can categorize everything and systemize things in really strategic ways.
Did you like that?
That was my favorite session of the whole thing.
I would have loved to hear that. That sounds really cool.
There are special speakers every year, and a lot of it is about figuring out what your vision is for your business and your life. And then a lot of it turns into a sales pitch for the Brian Buffini coaching program.
I remember when I told Sherry I was going the first year, she said, it's great, but they're going to try to sell you on it. So just remember that. You have to decide if it's worth it for you. But yeah, I think if you go into it knowing that will happen, then take it with a grain of salt, right?
Right. And it's one of those things where like some people love being on the program and some people love having the coach.
Do you know anyone that's in the program?
Yeah. So we have a few agents in our office that are doing the one-on-one coaching. So what that means is you pay, I think it's around $500 a month or something like that. And you have a one-on-one coach that calls you every week, and you talk through your goals and you talk through what activities you need to be doing to be able to reach those goals. And the people who are a part of it, it seems like they are really enjoying it and like the accountability from people that don't necessarily know them, because everybody has their broker and everybody has people in their office that will be their accountability partner or whatever.
Well, not everyone does, though. I think that in your office, everyone does. But there's probably a lot of people out there that don't feel like they have that support system.
Right. And so if you don't have that support system, I think the Buffini model is pretty genius. He's kind of like systemized everything to make it pretty simple to understand. And his big philosophy is you need to be talking to your people and seeing them in real life and popping by their house to say hi and writing them notes and doing all of those things. And it's one of those things that everybody knows that you should be doing as a salesperson. But do you actually have a system that you follow, that you do all the time consistently?
It's basically like working out with a trainer.
Right. It's exactly like that because that person is there to be your accountability. Like, hey,
To keep you in check.
Yeah. And did you write those 25 notes last week that you said you were going to? And the reason you're writing those 25 notes is so that you can do XYZ with your life, right? And so they're pretty genius, first of all, for being able to make money off of just the fact that all realtors are pretty inconsistent to begin with. I mean, half of our job is we're in cars running around being lunatics.
Not doing the same thing every day. You know, no 2 days look the same. And who can't use a little extra motivation, right?
Right. And not just motivation, just like you just need to do the things, you know?
Yeah.
Like half of the conference is him kind of making fun of the fact that real estate agents are pretty inconsistent in terms of calling their friends, popping by people's houses, which I don't do pop-bys. We've talked about this before, but I do other things that touch my people and make the contacts. And so I feel like I've done those things. But they're pretty genius for making that much money off of people who just need extra accountability for doing those things, you know?
So, how many Buffini success tours have you been to?
I've been to two.
How much did it cost?
The first year I went, it was about $95 because it was like a negotiated rate that our company got for having a bunch of people buy tickets at the same time. And then this year they tried to negotiate that, but it seems like the Buffini team was pretty adamant about everybody paying the full price. So the full price was, I think, $295. And then you pay for, your hotel stay and your food and all that jazz. And it's a 2-day conference.
The one that I went to, it was the last day where they tried to sell you on the whole package.
hmm This time, I think they did a better job at kind of integrating their different programs and different things that they do into both of the days. So it wasn't a straight like selling session where they're talking about XYZ because they have a bunch of different levels to their systems, I guess. So it didn't feel to me as sales pitchy as it did the first year that we went. And you and I both went that same year.
Yeah. Except I dipped out before the sales part because at the time they were doing it the last half of the last day. And so I sat through all of the motivational and like informative stuff and then I left. Because I was told that all that was left was really the sales pitch.
Right. And so this year, I think they did a better job at kind of integrating it into the rest of the content they were talking about. And so that was nice. But it's also a product that like people need in our industry, I think. So I resist the sales side of stuff because I feel like I get that community and stuff in my office. So I don't feel that I need to spend $500 a month to get it. But I know that so many people need it, obviously, because he's like a gajillionaire.
What would you say were the top three big takeaways for you?
Because of where I am in my business, I feel like I know that I need to be doing the contacts and the daily activities and that sort of thing. For me, the big takeaways were all having to do with scheduling and like getting things done. So basically, scheduling the time before I allow my week to go to hell, right? Because that always happens. You always get distracted and you always have an emergency that you need to fix and whatever. Before any of that can get derailed, schedule the time and just go ahead and do the activities that you know you need to do to build your business. And also put that in your schedule as if it's a non-negotiable, like a buyer counseling session or showing property or, doing whatever you feel is the thing you need to be doing to build your business. But just because you have a buyer right now doesn't mean you're going to have a buyer in a month and a half, right? And so that was a really big thing that was just, I needed a reminder, And then the other really big takeaway for me was David Allen, who was that productivity expert. He was talking about how your brain is not meant to hold information, it's meant to process information, but it's not meant to hold information. So you need to like create space so that your brain is able to do like the creativity things and strategic thinking and things like that. And so if you're constantly thinking about, oh, I need to do that, oh, I need to do that, oh, I need to do that, and you don't just like dump it all out and categorize it strategically, then you don't have room to be able to be present or be able to take on all of those surprises that, always pop up throughout the day.
I like that.
So his big thing was basically you need to dump every goddamn thing out of your brain.
So by journaling or
So find a thing that works for you. So kind of like what we were talking about in that podcast, like get your shit together, getting everything out of your brain, not just your tasks and whatever, but like literally everything. Like if you're like, oh, I need to hang that picture on the wall, or I need to clean out my purse or whatever, like all the things that are creating chaos in your day, put that all down. And it doesn't need to be just your daily work tasks or your home tasks or whatever. Like it's literally everything that you think. Write it down in a place that you can capture it. And then once you have time that you can download and look at all the things that you thought about throughout the day, then you can like clarify what is most important and go from there. Which I was like, that's super simple, right? A super simple idea, but it's so hard to do in reality. And you just end up dumping it somewhere in your brain, and then it's just going to come back.
absolutely.
So that's like a perfect use for like your bullet journal. Like have the brain dump that just is literally everything in your brain, not just.
I just realized that when we had that episode where we talked about getting organized, we didn't talk about what we do for the podcast. And we actually just have a shared Google Doc, which we call our podcast brain dump. And that's where we collectively put all of our ideas, all of our notes, everything for the podcast. And sometimes I'll be going through that and be like, oh, hey, that's a great idea. And it's something that one of us wrote like 3 months ago, you know?
And so if you just have a place that is consistently your place to what he called it was a mind sweep, like sweep your mind of all the like dust and whatever. Maybe we need to do like a full episode on what he talked about during that, because the whole time I was just like writing the entire time and just nodding. I was a little old lady in church being like, yes, amen.
You had your hands up in the air.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And then another really big takeaway for me too was in one of Brian's sessions, he was talking about mastery and like how to master your craft and what growth feels like throughout the entire like journey. And he was talking about when you're building a business, you work, 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 and you're kind of at like a level playing field. And then all of a sudden, because you've been doing all of those tasks, and all of those activities that are so important, you have a peak. Like you have huge growth, you feel awesome, sometimes you feel like you're pushing your limits and you feel like you're losing your mind. And then you kind of like plateau again, but you're still above where you were plateauing the first time. And then you continue doing the activities, you keep going, and then you have another big peak. And he was talking about how most of the time you're spending your time at a plateau. Like you're not always growing, growing, growing.
And you're not always peaking.
Right. And so those are always the times when people get frustrated, right? And they quit in real estate and they move on to something else, they get a job somewhere else, or they just keep going. And if they keep going and keep doing the work and keep doing the activities, then they're bound to have another peak, right? Kind of like we talked about this, like if you just do the activities, sometimes clients come out of nowhere.
Yeah. It's the real estate gods. It's real estate karma.
Yeah. And so
I absolutely believe that.
he was just kind of talking about like if you're at a plateau and you're feeling frustrated, at the point that you're feeling frustrated, you're about to hit the next peak because you've been doing the work and you're pissed off that you've been doing the work and it's not coming to fruition. And so that was something that I took and held on and like put it in my pocket and carried it around with me.
That is such an encouraging thing to hear.
Yeah.
I think that's really true. I think that anyone that has really put a solid amount of work into this business and into really anything where you have to work hard to reap the rewards, that message can really resonate with anyone in that position.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I even have gone through that in the last week. Had moments where I was like, okay, I feel like everyone I'm working with right now is at a stalemate.
Like they're not super motivated or
I have a buyer that's having a really hard time getting under contract on something and for whatever reasons, and another buyer who's just totally taking their sweet time, really not in a hurry. All of my leads are kind of feeling stagnant. They're not going anywhere. And so I sat down and was like, you know what? I'm just going to work on trying to get new stuff because nothing's happening with these. I was feeling really stressed. I was feeling like, well, shoot, maybe I'm just not going to make any money this year. As soon as I started to feel really down about that, all of these great things started happening. So
I think there's like a lot of truth to what he was talking about. And then the other thing that he touched on was whenever you're going up, like whenever you're continuing to grow and continuing to master what you do, your peaks, your next plateau is higher than your last peak sometimes. And it's really easy to kind of forget where you came from and like what you started at. And so for me, going to things like this are like really good reminders of that because I went to Buffini in my first year and I just remember like my excitement level when I was a brand new agent at it. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like what? What is working by referral anyway? And, what the hell is a Popeye?
yeah.
And like at that time, I was like super jazzed about Popeyes because I love corny jokes and whatever. But then when you think about what you are really good at and what your gifts are, like what your personal gifts are and what you like doing, you don't have to do whatever crap you don't want to do. Just like
Yeah.
really focus on the good stuff that you're amazing at and that you don't avoid, like the plague, like for me, Popeyes.
Anyone can find what works for them. As long as you're not the kind of person that's like, oh, I don't like to be around people. Because then, I'm sorry, friend, but you should probably go get another job. You find whatever works for you. I think we talked about that in the client event episode. If it's Popeyes, all right, like do it. If it's writing, 20 notes a day, do it. That's great.
Yeah.
I just remember feeling really motivated to do something, to just work really hard after going.
Right. Last year I didn't go because there were some things going on in my personal life that I had to miss it for, but like I think it's just going to be an annual thing that I go to every year because
Can I come with you
yes,
next year?
girl. Yeah, and we stayed at a super cute Airbnb that was like within walking distance of where it is held. And it was just so nice. Like we loved our little Airbnb.
One of the benefits of going to something like this is the fact that there's just agents from all over the state meeting at this conference.
There were people like from all over the nation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I have this like fear of Popeyes and I don't really do them that often. I decided that I was going to hand out Popeyes to the different agents at the Brian Buffini Success Tour.
Can I just say, your Popeyes were so adorable.
Thank you.
I nearly died when I saw them.
Okay, so like in the middle of the day at these conferences, you're like starving before lunch happens because you're just like sitting still. You're not like, I don't know. I'm always starving because I'm just like sitting still. Everyone loves a snack.
You want a snack?
I got a bunch of bags of Cheez-Its and we have a designer in-house that we can get custom things made. And so I said, hey, I got Cheez-Its. And in my mind, I'm thinking that I want to say something about how like Allison McPherson, she's it. Like she's the agent for you to send referrals to.
Yeah.
And so that's what she did. She basically replicated the Cheez-It label.
It was so cute. Like upon first look, you think it's Cheez It, and then you look closer and it says She's It. It's so cute.
It was so corny. She put them on little stickers and I stuck them all on the bags and I put my card on there and I walked around and handed them out and whatever. But like there were people from everywhere. I got trail mix from somebody from Oregon and theirs said, "Come meet us on the Oregon Trail."
That is so
And I was
cute.
like, "Oh shit.
Do you remember the game Oregon Trail?
Yes." Of course I do. I was like, "Oh my God, these people are geniuses." But like there were people from all over the country. And so that was super cool. I also met a really sweet couple. They were from Pittsburgh and they gave me doggy poop bags. I wish I remember what the label said. It was super cute though. And we talked about our dogs for like 15 minutes. And I actually didn't hand out all of my Popeyes because I ended up like talking for too long to people.
Of course. That does not surprise me in the least. My next question was going to be, did you really get a chance to network with other agents, or were you kept isolated within your own office group? But it sounds like that wasn't the case. Like you did get to spend a lot of time with other agents.
I pretty much networked with other agents on the breaks. So like when everybody was like up, milling around, going to the bathroom, getting whatever they needed to get. I got there pretty early. I left probably 20 minutes after the last session.
Okay.
That was really the only time that I was really networking with other agents outside of my office.
So you weren't really partying with other agents after?
Afterwards, we went out to dinner as a company, and we have 3 offices in Virginia. And so it's also super important to me to like talk to the agents in the other offices and get to know them and that sort of thing. So that's what I did. And then, the hotel lobby at the main hotels typically have more people there, but we kind of hung out with our office. We
Cool.
were isolated.
I mean, it's still so much fun. For those of you that don't know, like, it's just so much fun afterwards because realtors, they like to party.
Yes.
And it's kind of like that feeling when you used to go to summer camp
Yeah.
and you just make new friends and you just have so much fun. It's such a good time.
Yeah, so it was really fun for that. And I really would suggest people do the Popeye thing, which is funny coming from me because I like have a fear and hatred for Popeyes, but it actually was a really good way to like get people to talk to me.
No, I think that's a great idea. When I went, there was only one agent doing that, so it's cool that there's a lot more people doing it now.
Yeah.
I want to be able to have someone that I've met in another state to be able to refer people to.
Yeah, I would so much rather do
That
that.
helps me out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else that you want to say about it?
No, I mean, I think it was a really fun event. I didn't buy the coaching program or anything like that, but I think it is a great product for people who might be looking for that extra accountability and things like that. And it was super interesting because they went over a bunch of stats of like what the national average for like what realtors make from like NAR. And it was like,
How much is it? Because I remember it being like 30,000.
yeah, it was like 29,000 something. And that was GCI. That wasn't like after people split.
No way.
I mean, because if you think about it, like think of how many people,
There's so many people that are only doing like one deal a year.
right? And for me, that's not even worth paying my MLS dues, you know?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that's worth it for anyone. I was doing my taxes last week, my license renewal fees and MLS fees and association dues and all of that.
Right.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
It's not cheap being a realtor. So I don't know how it could be worth it for someone that's only doing 1 or 2 deals.
Well, and if you think about like the trend of getting into real estate, there's a lot of people who get into real estate to think they'll make a lot of money really quick. They're an agent for 1 year, they make $0, and then they get out. But there's probably a lot of people that do that. And so I think they bring down the average,
Yeah.
But then they shared the stat of their members and it was like way higher. It was like 356,000 or something way higher, probably because they're probably full-time agents. If they're not full-time agents, they're agents that are making significant investments into their business because they're paying $500 a month for coaching. They're committed.
And I think also because they're based out of California, they're based out of San Diego, they probably have a lot of California agents. The, average sales price in California is pretty friggin' high,
Right.
and so that's got to have something to do with it.
Probably. So when you and I went together, was your experience similar? Like, do you feel the same way about the Success Tour? I mean, I know it was 2 years ago. Do you even remember?
I do remember. I look back on it so fondly. I really wanted to go. I mean, I would have loved to have gone last year, but I had a 8-week-old or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, so I wasn't able to go that year, and this year it was just also really last minute. I really want to go next year. I really want to plan it, and I want to go with you. I actually didn't pay to go because that year, I don't know if you remember, but our CEO did a competition where if you referred any deals to one of the other offices, she would pay for your Buffini ticket. And I did do that. And so I didn't have to pay. And I don't know if I would have paid, but if it was only $95 at the time, then no, I would have paid. So take that back. I was thinking about the $295. I don't know if I would have paid that. I would now, though, knowing that I really liked the experience. So I didn't have to pay, which was great. Obviously did have to get a hotel and all of that, but that was really fun. And I remember really enjoying it. I remember, aside from the keynote speaker, who I wasn't really into that, I didn't really feel like I got a lot out of that. I do remember one thing that he said that I will always remember. So, maybe I did get more than I thought out of it. I remember him saying that he used Michael Jordan as an example and said that Michael Jordan was so well loved, and that if there was ever a play where whatever he did was kind of gray, whether or not it was a foul or whether or not it was out of bounds or whatever, referees usually sided in his favor because he was such a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember him saying that?
Yeah.
He was such a nice guy. He would ask the referee how their kids were doing and sign autographs for them, and not in like a politician kind of cheesy or sleazy way, but just in a really genuinely nice way. And that always stuck with me, that you can always make your experience and everyone and your client's experience a little bit better if you're just really nice and if you're just a really good person about things.
Right.
And so that's why whenever I'm talking to an appraiser or an inspector or anyone that can have any sort of positive or negative effect on this transaction, I just try to be the nicest I possibly can. And I just try to, be super cooperative. And I don't understand agents that try to do the opposite, because it always ends up hurting them in the end. So that's one thing that I definitely took away from it. Another thing that I really liked was, for those of you that might not know anything about Brian Buffini's story, is he's actually an immigrant. So he is from Ireland, and he was in the States, and he got into a big accident and owed a bunch of money in hospital bills. And basically his big success story is that he started selling real estate to pay off the $200,000 or something like that he had in hospital bills. Is that right?
Yeah. And I think he says, like, if it would have happened today, it would have been like $2 million, like the equivalent.
Because of inflation.
Yeah.
So he talks about the immigrant edge, and he basically says, listen, guys, I'm telling you to pop by the people you know's houses every once in a while with a little treat. I'm telling you to write 20 notes a week. I'm telling you to do these things that if you're, and when he's saying this, I'm thinking about my parents, because my parents are immigrants. My parents got here and they worked really, really hard to make a life for us and to raise 6 kids in California, which is not easy, and all of these things. And he says, like, if you were to tell them all you have to do is write these 20 notes a week and do these things and stop by people's houses with flowers and stuff like this, and that's how you can make X amount of money and, have financial freedom, what do you think they would say? Like, they would jump at that chance. They were working above and beyond that. I mean, I remember my dad My dad owns a construction company, and I remember growing up, he would his company was really small. It was really him and a couple other workers, and he would come home hurting, like physically, because he had worked so hard, and he knew that he couldn't take a day off because he was the company. And so I'm just thinking, like, why am I complaining and why am I being lazy if I'm not doing these things?
Right.
That whole message was really, really powerful. And I think about that really often because I'm super appreciative of everything that my parents have done for me, given that it probably wasn't easy because they, came from a poor country to like have the American dream. That was something that I really liked from it. I think that Buffini is a great thing to do once a year to get a little fire lit under your butt
Yeah,
and to get you.
I think so.
It's towards the beginning of the year. You've already had a couple months where you've kind of settled in and you've started things, but it's not too late that it's too late to start a new system or to start new strategies for yourself and see results from them. And I'm not even talking about buying the Buffini package because for me that was never even an option and it never even crossed my mind. But I think that I would definitely go back regularly just for the motivational part because I remember coming home and sitting down with my husband and being like, okay, we need to set these goals and we need to, and like I totally got him involved in this thing and he was like, I really don't want to do this. But I remember being like, we need to set financial goals and personal goals and health goals, and I don't know if he talked about that this time around, but he had like a section on like goal setting and finances and all of these things. And there's some things that he said that I always think about. I always think about the fact that he said, before you pay yourself, before you pay your mortgage, before you pay anything else, like pay yourself in the future, put money in your savings. And so that's what I do.
Yeah.
And like I live by that and I really like that. And so I think that he is a really, really smart guy. I think that he has a lot of good stuff to say. I've heard agents before say, you've been to one Buffini, you've been to all of them. You've seen one, you've seen them all, kind of a thing. And yeah, maybe the material isn't that crazy different every year, but so what? Like, I think that's sometimes you need to hear the same thing again.
Yeah.
Because no, I don't think he's reinventing the wheel.
No. And it's also kind of like, it's kind of refreshing to have somebody that believes in what he's saying so much that he continues to say it all the time. Part of his message is what you were saying, like he came from nothing and now he's here and he has a jet and he has all these things. And easy to kind of like roll your eyes at that and kind of be like, okay, like now you're like this rich dude, but also like that's pretty freaking impressive. Like you got there because you did the system that now you're trying to get everybody else to do, and all of us are like resisting like the plague, like no, I don't want to call anybody.
I mean, I think that we all have those times when we just don't want to do it. An agent that I respect like the most and love the most, and you can probably guess who it is. But like, I've even seen them be like, I don't want to do it. I don't feel like doing it this week. Like, I'm still so mad about that deal that I lost last week or whatever. And like, spent the next month being like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And like, we've all been there. And I think we can all sympathize with that. But then I think that we can all equally like listen to what Buffini has to say and get off our butts and be like, okay, now it's time to clock back in.
There was one thing that they said. Let me see if I can find it in my notes.
So they give you like a notebook to write in throughout the whole thing. And I filled in all my notes and then I left them in our hotel room because that is just the classic Alex stuff that I like to do. Nadia Anak, who was on our last episode, is such a beautiful, wonderful, magical, angelic woman. She found an empty notebook and copied all of her notes for me.
Oh,
And I walked into the office one day and they were just sitting on my desk, like filled in by her. And I just love her.
she's an angel.
Isn't that the
That is
sweetest
so
thing?
sweet.
She's a great note taker too.
Oh, I bet. I bet she is after going through law school. Oh. It was during one of the motivational things, and it's okay to push pause. It's okay to miss a day, but the next day you have to get back on and push play again. Or like, it's okay to pause, but it's not okay to quit just because you like
Yeah.
consistently quit, you know?
I have to be really honest with myself and say that last year, I feel like I almost quit last year. And I didn't actually consider like stopping doing real estate, but I had such a hard time swallowing the fact that I just had to like get back to work.
Yeah.
I just came up with so many excuses. Some of them were like had some validity to them, you know. I had just had a baby. Who's going to watch the baby? I don't want to leave my kid with a stranger, you know, but like I waited extra long to get back into the swing of things. I was also intimidated by being in a new area, and I just think about last year and how I said like but so many times, like, oh but this, oh but that, but oh but, you know, and I gave myself so many excuses. And like really, we are so good at arguing a side of something, right? That's what we do for a living. And so you can argue that you don't need to be working that hard or you don't need to be doing whatever it takes until you're blue in the face.
Right.
But like it's only going to hurt you ultimately, right? It's not, no one else cares.
Right.
Your coach might care, but like really no one else cares.
And everyone said amen.
Well, this has been a lovely episode.
Yay.
In all seriousness, guys, if you like this podcast, give us 5 stars on whatever app you're using to listen to it. Every time someone gives us 5 stars, we cry.
Seriously.
And every time someone writes us a beautiful review, we also cry.
Yeah. And in a good way. We also like go, ee!
We do. We get really excited when we feel like anyone enjoys what we're doing. And I mean, we enjoy it just hanging out, the two of us talking. But if you want to show us some love, that is our love language. My love language is Apple Podcast reviews. How about yours?
My love language is sharing this podcast with a friend.
I love that. We should do that. Have you seen that meme that's like the 5 love languages as it pertains to Target?
No.
Oh, there's a 5 love languages tacos. So our 5 love languages as it pertains to the Call Before Showing podcast would be words of affirmation, writing us a review saying how great we are, acts of service, taking the time to listen to the podcast, receiving gifts, gifting this podcast to someone else in their inbox, which is free, quality time, taking the time to listen to our podcast, and physical touch, touching the play button to play our podcast.
Yes. And all the people said amen.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We had a really fun time recording it. Make sure to follow us on Instagram.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Call Before Showing and Facebook as well. And thanks so much for listening.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye. Catch you next time.